All right, well, good evening again. Certainly great to be with you. And so I'll ask the first question and a good opportunity for us to kick off the proceedings for the evening. Certainly each of us has to think about the ways in which we are individually engaged in these efforts. Jasiri, I'll begin with you. If you would, tell us a little bit more about yourself, specifically the current work that you're involved with in the city of Pittsburgh and the ways in which you're helping build greater peace and prosperity in our neighborhoods.
Peace, everybody. My name is Jasiri X. I'm co-founder and CEO of One Hood Media. A little bit about myself. I'm originally from South Side of Chicago. I came to Pittsburgh in the mid-'90s. And for me, really, Pittsburgh, my given name is Jasiri. Like my mother raised me to be socially conscious, but I didn't really understand until I moved from the South Side of Chicago to Monroeville, Pennsylvania. And, I kind of faced like racism, like in my face. Like first time I was at Monroeville Mall, I was called a nigga, like first time. And I remember, coming from is like my mom, my sister, and me thinking like, what do I do in that moment? Like, how do I handle that? So being from Chicago, my first reaction and response to somebody being racist to my face was to fight. I got suspended and my mom let me know like, nah, we can't have that. My mom became a nuclear engineer, graduated valedictorian from Roosevelt University. And so for my mom, education was, the way out. It was our way out of poverty. And so if I get suspended, it goes on my permanent record. And so this is how I got into activism. Really, I couldn't do nothing. I had to do something. And so at Gateway, we started a black club. We got to school to teach a black history class. And that's how I got more involved in activism. Flash forward to One Hood. There was a group of us that around 2006, we were all working with, particularly young black men. I, at the time, was at Pittsburgh Public Schools. I was what they called a teen parent advocate. I did counseling and case management for teen fathers. And we just got tired of seeing the young men that we were working with go to prison or get killed. And so we came up with this concept of One Hood. At that time, we were the younger activists, you know what I'm saying? And we felt like what we saw missing kind of from the activist space was hip hop. We were children of the hip hop generation. As hip hop celebrates its 50th anniversary, we wanted to bring like that hip hop culture into the activism space. And that's why we called it One Hood. Also for us, we looked at like a lot of our neighborhoods, we suffer from the same conditions, whether it be community violence, police violence, poverty, unemployment, and we take our frustrations out on one another. And we felt like our unity is the key to dealing with the systemic issues that are facing our community. So really, I've been doing this work since 2006 as an artist, activist, utilizing hip hop. One Hood today, there's 5 pillars of One Hood, like there's 5 pillars of hip hop. Our pillars are art, activism, education, media, and civic engagement. And so we do that work. Art is the basis for what we do. And we believe in the transformative power of art and the liberatory aspect of art, particularly hip hop, to me, which is a medium that speaks truth to power. And so we're utilizing that to try to make Pittsburgh livable for everybody and not just a select few.
All right, appreciate that. Please give him a welcome. Sammy, I'll pass it over to you for those who may not know you, an opportunity for you to introduce yourself and a way to talk about some of the ways you're having impact in the neighborhoods around our region as well.
Yeah. Good evening. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. So some of the ways, and it's interesting because a lot of people who are actively in the streets, doing this work, doing it from a nonprofit, doing it from other spaces, don't always consider ourselves activists. And I didn't consider myself an activist for a long time. Now I consider myself an economic justice activist and focusing on being very, very intentional about creating economic justice opportunities for Black families in the city. And why is there intention needed to do that? Well, historically, for anybody that doesn't understand the history of redlining, the history. Black folks didn't get access to credit for a very long time. Lots of economic pathways were not open to us. And so it's important that we are presently focusing on ways to keep those pathways open and ways to widen the path. And so that's what we do. That's what I have been doing. It feels like a very long time. I found myself in the nonprofit space sort of by accident. Did not intend as a poor kid growing up to ever find a job labeled nonprofit. That didn't make sense at all. But that's how I discovered that is my purpose. It is my passion to take the experiences that I've had as a child in poverty, as an adult in poverty, raising my own children. I wanted to try to ease the pain, to help people heal from generational poverty trauma and create very intentional opportunities and pathways for people to attain assets, which in turn we hope becomes a portion of generational wealth for people.
Please give her a hand. Our fearless leader, I'll hand it over to you, an opportunity. Most of the people here should know you, but in the event they don't, an opportunity for you to introduce yourself.
If you don't know me now, you know, right? So my name is Carlos Carter. I'm the president and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Pittsburgh. In terms of this work, I feel like, unlike Tammy, it's very personal to me. I've always been blessed, but I've been in poverty, and so I do have lived experience. And so for me, my personal mission is always to leave people and places better than I found them. And I truly see success as not only realizing your potential, but helping others to realize theirs. And so I think that dovetails well with the work of the Urban League, which is to enable African Americans, I say other marginalized communities, achieve economic, self-reliance, parity, power, and civil rights. But a lot of focus for me is the economic part. So, even with my own family, I've seen a lot of people struggle. And so for me, it's important that we, as the Urban League and myself personally, do all we can. And so I'm really proud about, what Ms. Bush created with her Center for Economic Self-Reliance and our One Pittsburgh Now project, where we're really focusing on moving Black people from underemployed to economic self-sufficiency, really focus on 4 distinct communities, the North Side, Homewood, parts of the Mon Valley, in the Hill District. And really, I want to see our people thrive. Some of us aren't struggling, but many are, right? And so I want Pittsburgh to be most livable for all. So for me, it is very personal. And in addition to my work at the Urban League, with my book and other things, I'm always writing to inspire people. So it's important that we all realize our potential. And so I just want to be part of that solution.
Very good. Can we show our appreciation? Last but not least, Manny, the voice of the youth is critical, and so want to uplift you. Thank you for being here, an opportunity for you to introduce yourself and to talk a little bit about the ways you're impacting the community.
Thank you, I really appreciate it. First off, I'm gonna start off with, my real name is Mendez. That's like my first name, government, legal. I'm from the north side of Pittsburgh, grew up around Wilson Avenue, if any of y'all know where that is. Me growing up, I always been an outgoing kid, never liked staying in the house. I can't say that I grew up in a poor home because my grandmother and my mother always done what they could to make sure that we had a livable life. As long as we had food, clothes, and a roof over our head, we was cool. One thing I say, I am a victim of gun violence, and I'm not no pity. Like, it comes with the things that I was getting into, but as I was growing up, I always lived 2 lives. I went to a Christian school when I was younger, 8th grade, but I ended up leaving the school because of the racism that was going on, and like you said, like, I'm resulting to these, so I really couldn't do that. I had to take myself out of that situation and just move on. But I finished my high school years at Perry High School. I dropped out, and that's not the end of the road for me. Anybody like me is not the end of the road. I just say some things that I've done to help my community. I made videos just speaking on the troubles that me and my peers go through. Just the backlash that we get from the police in the neighborhood. Just a lot, I ain't gonna lie. That's it for me.
Okay, very good. Show appreciation.
Thank you, man.
And so loud and clear, I heard you. Mendez, I got it. We'll call you Mendez. I appreciate that. And so excited about getting into the discussion today. And so the first question that I'll pose to the panel is this. Certainly, as you think about ways to have impact on bringing more peace to our community, as you think about specific strategies to prioritize the work to make our communities more prosperous, specifically our neighborhoods, I want to know what's working right now. Certainly, it's important for us to focus attention on the best practice models, the things that we know are having an impact. And so I'll pose that question to the entire panel. What are the ways that you've seen specific initiatives, programs, efforts be impactful in impacting those two things? And what are the ways we can continue to escalate them and make them continue to grow? And that's posed to anyone.
I'm ready.
I see you excited, so go ahead.
So, how I mentioned our Center for Economic Self-Reliance, the thing I like about it, it really leverages partnership. And so I'll give an example. We had one young man who was working at McDonald's, working 2 jobs, trying to take care of his daughters. And so he faced many barriers, but had many opportunities. So we connected him with the Trade Institute of Pittsburgh and really provide support for him, connecting to food and things like that. And so what I like about that model is like you provide the support people need, but helping them remove barriers so they can achieve their dream, whatever that is. Because as I talk about my op-ed today, that, equity is so important. I always say, equality is giving everybody a pair of shoes. Equity is making sure they have a pair in their size. And so some of our folks are in a 100-yard dash, but others are already on a 50-yard, and our other folks are trying to get in the race. And so it's important that we do meet people where they are. And so the success of that program is that we're meeting people where they are. They can go through training programs at Urban League or tech programs or any place. They can go to Catapult anywhere, but we're going to help remove barriers. And we've had great success with that. And I know with the National Urban League, I just was in St. Louis, actually. I flew back late last night. And their Save Our Sons program is something they've helped thousands of black men, because the greatest unemployed group is young black men from 18 to 24, I believe. And so during Ferguson, they were out in the streets and when burning stuff down, literally, and upset. And they were like, well, what can we do? They said, we need jobs, the young black men were saying. So now they've helped thousands of people with Save Our Son model. And so I'm looking to bring that here to Pittsburgh. But that's just something that I think is important. And doing more of that is they're providing financing, collaborating with each other too, right? I like that model because it's collaborative, and our funders like that it's collaborative. Our credit is the success of the person, not on the Urban League itself.
Absolutely. Tammy, you want to weigh in?
Well, so I'm always surprised when people keep inviting me to these things. Because I always say something that's going to get me in trouble and somebody's not going to be happy. But, oh well.
It's okay, Tammy.
They say it's good trouble.
I mean, really. So I have to start by saying this. When I saw the title of this presentation, I realized that one thing we have to understand is we will not have peace without prosperity. We're not going to have peace. We're not going to eliminate or reduce crime in our neighborhoods. We're not going to stop seeing young men or young kids killing. We're not going to stop seeing that until we get really serious about investing in the prosperity of black folks in this city, in this county, and across the country. So, and I'm just super, I'm at this stage in my life where I'm very transparent about who I am and where I've been. And I, as a mother of 5, there is nothing that I wouldn't have done to feed them. Nothing. And so when we're watching the news and we're trying to figure out, well, what is going on? What is going on is things are getting worse and worse and worse for the black families in the city of Pittsburgh. That's just the reality. And if we want to do something about increasing peace, we have got to do something about increasing prosperity, and real prosperity. The prosperity that, so yeah, we do a really good job of band-aiding the issues that we have in the city, but we've got to get real about truly moving people to economic security, getting people to the place where they aren't in a place of desperation all the time. Because I'm telling you, as a mom of 5, I was 22 years old with 5 children. 22, single mother, no education to speak of, no support system to speak of. And there was nothing that I wouldn't do to make sure that my kids had food. And so when I tell you that I have been in the streets, I have been in a so-called gang. I hate that. That's family for somebody who's isolated and alone and desperate. And desperation leads people to some incredible places. Desperation leads people to decisions that those who haven't experienced hunger and homelessness over and over and over again would never do. You might never consider it. You probably sit at home and watch the news and say things like, oh my God, why would they do that? Well, they're doing it because of desperation. And so I think there are some really good things happening in this city. One thing in particular that stands out to me that has always stood out to me when I was looking for a place to send my son when my son was headed to the streets was youth football. Youth football leagues have saved a lot of these kids' lives. And I think they go overlooked and they're undervalued, right? Those grassroots organizations, the grandma on the corner who's giving kids a bag of raisins or a bag of fruit as they're walking to the bus stop. Those are the folks who are saving lives, truly, truly saving lives. And I just think that type of organic, natural effort to invest in our children and our families is overlooked. So I think we have to start paying attention to the people, the things, and the places that are truly serving our most vulnerable populations of people. Because in the work that we hear and see what desperation really looks like. And sometimes I can see it in people's eyes because I remember what it looked like in mine. This person is on their way to do what has to be done to survive. So, I think we have a lot of people in survival mode. And we've got to do what we can to get them out. And this is not a them problem. This is an all of us problem. Sure. Because I'm telling you, if my kids are hungry, I will knock somebody over the head to do what I have to do. I'm just being honest. Most of us would do what we have to do to make sure that ourselves and our families are surviving. So hopefully if we start thinking about it from that perspective, we'll get serious about trying to solve these issues and not just Band-Aid them.
Yeah, I agree 100% with your sentiment, Tammy. I would also say that, one of the coalitions that we're part of at One Hood is a coalition to reimagine public safety. Kind of came out of course, 2020, and people began to look at, policing as a whole. One of the things that we learned in the report that we put out studying policing in Pittsburgh is per the amount of people that Pittsburgh has one of the highest policed cities. For our side of the cities, we have, 10 to 30 times more police per people than most cities our size. We also spent, $50 million more over the last 5 years on policing. So if we're still not safe, if in 2023, despite that, we're not safe, then maybe policing isn't the answer. We should maybe consider that, right? We should consider maybe policing isn't the answer. Maybe more police and putting more police or profiling young black people isn't the answer. But we understand, as people thinking about reimagine public safety, it's very difficult to go into our communities, particularly, and talk to some older black people and say, we want to see less police. They're scared. They're afraid. And so we went and said, okay, community is actually doing the best around community violence. And the place that we went that might surprise you is Newark, New Jersey. Newark, New Jersey has had historic lows in murder. Newark, New Jersey actually, and this kind of surprised me, Newark, New Jersey had 20 less murders last year than Pittsburgh. Newark, New Jersey, like 99% black. If you, I know, and no disrespect, it's hood. Newark is hood. Downtown Newark is hood. You know what I'm saying? But what are they doing? So the mayor, Ras Baraka, is a brilliant, he's a brilliant leader. But one of the things they did, and he said, I didn't say defund the police, I just did it. They took 5% of the police budget and put it towards what they called the Office of Violence Prevention. So what they effectively did is they created a group, an organization that kind of sat between the community and the police. They staffed the Office of Violence Prevention with trusted community people. The people that work there are people that had been in the community knows and trusts, because you can't do anything like that. You can't just bring somebody in from out of town or, you know what I'm saying, put somebody there because they have a degree. If we don't know them, trust them, and have seen them in our community, then it's not going to work. So they did that. They actually took over a police station that had been abandoned. Now they're in there as the Office of Violence Prevention. They began to fund and invest in these organizations and individuals that Tammy was talking about. People that the community knew and understood that were in service to the community. So they had this group that, it's a street team. So whenever there might be a violence flare-up, they have a street team that are folks from the community that had been in the street, people that the community knew, that would go and do this street team work. So the guy who was running the street team, I said, man, tell me what's your background? How are you the head of the street team? He said, I committed murder in 1990, and I got life without parole, and I got out in 2012. He was somebody that had experienced, like Tammy said, he had went through that experience, went to prison, rehabilitated himself, came out of prison wanting to make sure other young people wouldn't go through the same things that he did. And so the mayor of Newark and them had the foresight to say he didn't have no degree in a doctorate here or there. He had a degree in being in those streets, the consequences of it, and what does it take to survive. And that's who they invested in. And so with this type of investing, there was a community organization that went to, was similar to One Hood. They do a lot of arts and stuff, but they were in a community that was violent. It wasn't as violent. So the city's actually spending money to move them into the area where they were like, okay, we don't need you here no more. This area is relatively peaceful. We need your community and your group and your studio over here. To me, that type of thinking is what gets us up out of here. And so it's frustrating to me because I don't believe we're being creative enough when we think around community violence. And I'll say the last thing, if you think about, I always, talk to our students, we have a cohort of young people in a cohort that we call We Keep Us Safe. And this cohort is producing media and helping us to think around events, safe spaces for young people. In my mind, I'm young, but I don't understand. I can't speak for this generation. That's why I'm happy that Manny is on the stage, right? And so for us, it was important that we develop young people of this generation to speak to this generation and let us know where we should invest our resources in. But it's just that thinking of we're just going to throw money at more police, whether or not they do well or not. I just think that we have to be more creative, we have to be more innovative, and we have to begin to invest in those people that have strategies that have successfully worked in our community. So like you said, the coaches, let's make sure they get more resources, more support, more money. You know what I'm saying? Those individuals that are mentoring a couple folks here or there, how can we support them? One of the things that we do, and it's the last thing I'll say at One Hood, we started incubating other organizations because, when we started, we were not incubated. We were a lot of established organizations kind of were against us. And it was disappointing for me So for me, when I see, somebody coming up, and I know Carlos has been on the scene, but he's in leadership now, his success is my success. I want to support what this brother's doing. You know what I'm saying? I want to support. I don't think we need less organizations. We need more. We need more minds. We need more intellect. We need more brilliance. And so when we started to see younger organizations coming up, we helped them get resources. I just had a conversation with some young brothers yesterday and said, man, let's see if we can get you enough money to one of y'all can do this full time, do this work full time. And then, let's grow your organization and the work that you do. And so I think those are the things that we're doing that we're having some success with. But let's get creative. The last thing I'll say is this.
Is he a Baptist preacher?
This is what I ask. Like, if you think about...
I'm going to throw my notes away.
If you think about the places you've been that have been the most prosperous, right? The wealthiest places you've been. Do you see police? You don't even see police stations in these places. So it's not police that makes our community safe. It's resources. It's prosperity that makes our community safe. That's what we need, not more police.
Yeah, my bad. To add on to what y'all were saying, when I was in high school, it was this girl, Katira Moore. She created this organization called Tree to Development. And what Tree to Development was, she's a young black girl, maybe 2 years younger than me. And she started it just with the hopes of getting resources for students that went to Perry who were females that didn't have the same opportunity as every other girl, like coming to school with their hair done, having supplies, different things of that nature, like good textbooks. And when she started this, like, I seen it grow just from high school to now. Like, she graduated and everything, but it was just the start of that created a community for her and Perry as well, because her and Perry partner together now. But just like you said, those resources, everybody wants the same thing. If we all had $1 million in the hood, we cool. Like, we don't, it's nothing that we need. You give black people money, they're good in a way. But just to say, like, okay, I done seen the drug dealers help out their community. I was one of them. Like, I done seen to where we're putting up hundreds of dollars to fund a community event to where everybody's kid in the neighborhoods coming, people's trash is getting taken out, just different things like necessities in the projects that people don't get to experience. And so as soon as they took most of my friends away to jail, most of them's dead, just things like that, it's like you don't see it anymore. You don't see no block parties to where it's like you could actually come and have the kids running around. Like, people make a lot of things about older people. It's really about, like, let the kids be kids. Just, man, funding different things like basketball events, getting the courts together. We hear it time after time, oh, we gonna do this for y'all, we gonna do this for y'all. It don't happen until like 5 years later. I'm 25, bro, what you, like, it ain't nothing that I could do now. But just to say, like, when we ask for these things, even though just because we get looked at in a different light, because like you said, survival mode, like when you're in survival mode, like it gets real to where anything you gotta eat, food is food. If you gotta destroy somebody to get what you need, you will do that. Like, it brings the worst out of you. And just, I feel like if we had actual mentors and people who really cared about the community instead of coming up here and saying, not y'all.
I'm glad you clarified that.
But like, just real people who would actually feel how we feel and come talk to us instead of, like, we have organizations to where A big one for me was urban impact. That's what kept me out of the street at a young age, but I resorted back to it. But if you like, urban impact is almost white run. Mm-hmm. Like, if we had an organization like that that was full of black people, mm-hmm. it would be such more of a difference because I could relate to you. Mm-hmm. We go through the same struggles and different things like that, racism, like, white people don't really understand racism from a black people sense. Mm-hmm. Then everybody thinks it's, oh, we're blaming white people. We're not. We just, this is what we go through. Like, it's nothing that we could say, okay, sometimes it's just people in survival mode take over and they get looked at more than anybody else. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Mm-hmm. Why do people in survival mode get looked at more than somebody who's flourishing?
Well, I want to lean into that just a bit. Let me lean into that just a bit. Give me a hand. I appreciate that. Give me a hand.
That's a great point.
I think that's a good point that you raised, and I want to pivot the conversation in just a bit in terms of we're having a lot of discussion about people who are in the community and the importance of us being collectively impacted and invested in our community. I'm interested in your discussion on those who don't necessarily live in our neighborhoods. I think the greater conversation that I want us to amplify for just a bit is what's the responsibility for organizations and individuals who aren't necessarily specifically rooted in the black community to come and make investment in the black community? I'd like to hear from you all on that.
It starts with really caring.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Manny.
It really starts with like genuinely caring.
That's right.
Because not everybody's for us how they say they are. Like, y'all ever have a friend who, oh, bro, do this, do that, but every time you post like something that pertains to you or the betterment of you, they're like, you never see their name under it. You never see them sharing it. Oh, this is my friend. Like, people don't really genuinely care nowadays. I feel like a lot of people's just for themselves. And we need to bring back that community to where it's like, I could go to down the street and go to the hood grandma, and she always going to be there. Like, just real genuineness in people. That's the biggest thing for me.
No, I love that because he asked the right question. Because here the answer is that we have people are profiting off of poverty. So poverty is very profitable, right? So from the largest, always has been, always will be, right? We have become we're a commodity. And as long as there is capitalism, that's going to be true. And so it benefits people. And we always want to say it's the big corporations, but trust me, this nonprofit thing, this nonprofit thing is a whole nother animal, right? If we really want to get down to it, look at the money. We have more nonprofits in this county than some whole states have. We have the largest philanthropic community in the country. So why do we still have the statistics around poverty, statistics around some of the biggest issues in our society? Why do we still have so many? Something's not adding up. 1 + 1 is not equaling 3. Something's weird about that we have so many resources and so many nonprofit organizations that say they do this work, yet we have the most ridiculous statistics around crime, poverty, homelessness. It doesn't make any sense. So for me, the answer is that nobody, not saying nobody, but a lot of the people that say they care, a lot of the corporations that say they care, a lot of the nonprofits that say they care, some of it is just a lot of talk. And I feel like we all have a responsibility to hold them accountable. Until we start holding folks in power accountable, these are the conversations we're going to continue to have. We have an abundance, an overabundance of resources in this city. So from my perspective, a lot of this is unacceptable, but it will continue if we don't hold folks accountable. And that includes holding the funders accountable. That includes holding corporate America accountable. That includes holding the nonprofits that are not really nonprofits accountable. So we've got a lot of work to do, and I think that the bigger challenge is we have to stop pointing the finger at the victims.
True.
And start looking at what are we not doing? Okay, stop saying we've always done it this way. Well, that's the problem. That's the problem. So sometimes folks' egos are so big that they don't want to say, maybe it's my program. Maybe it's my stuff. Maybe I need to reevaluate how I do what I do.
Now, I am mindful of time, and so if you have a question, we want to get to the audience questions. Jasiri, I'll let you respond to that, and then if folks have a question, we'll come to you. Raise your hand, please.
Yeah, I remember like 2020. We always, when we talk about 2020, one of the things we talk about is when like the Instagram black squares, the black squares on Instagram, and a lot of people in that moment, and they may have been sincere. Like we saw a lot of like promises made about support that people were going to give to black-led organizations and the black community in general, and a lot of that wasn't followed up on. We saw a lot of people hired in diversity spaces in 2020 that don't have those jobs today in 2023 that like got fired or moved out of those positions. I'll just give you two really quick stats. Did you know Pennsylvania as a state, when it comes to supporting black businesses, only 4% goes to black businesses in Pennsylvania state. I think University of Pittsburgh might be 3% goes to black businesses of the money and the funds that they give out. So I think part of it is beginning to say, first it starts with these things. Are you genuine? Like, do you really want to help us as a community? And then it's like, well, what are you doing now with the massive amount of budgets or resources that you have? What are you doing now? I'll give an example that I give in the arts funding space, right? So you had the Warhol and the Matrix Factory. They got $30 million to develop what they call the Pop District on the north side, right? Cultural Trust gets $20 million to do what they're doing downtown. Carnegie Mellon got $30 million for what they call the Office of Shared Prosperity. Now, they're great people at all of these organizations, right? And then when it came to supporting the black arts organizations, they said, okay, we're going to call you all cultural treasures, and about 20 of you all will have to divide up $5 million. So you see, like, and it's like, well, wait a second. How come we aren't supported at the level of these other groups and organizations despite the history that we have? So it was beautiful to me. I was so happy to see Carlos in the Urban League get the support from Mackenzie Scott, right? Because I know, come on. No, because the Urban League has a record, a track record. So I know that with you all receiving that level of fund, you're just going to do more work and support more people. And it was funny. You should have had to begin with, in my opinion. You feel me?
Any questions for the audience before I kick another question? I want to make sure that we appropriately give time. And I'm mindful that we have about 15 minutes left and we're going to pivot to the breakout discussion. Any questions? Anybody have anything for the good of the order? Okay. I see one right here. And so we'll go. State your name and your question. Here, we're going to come to you with the microphone. Mike, if you turn it on.
The economic justice, identifying that there's a need, but we have to close that gap, that racial wealth gap. We have to close it in our communities. The leveraging our communities.
I think we're trying to get your microphone on. Give me just a second. And if not, our AV folks have one right here. I want to make sure that we give appropriate attention to your question.
Can you hear me? Leveraging our partnerships was one thing that was brought up. How do you suggest that we go out and we leverage our partnerships?
There are numerous organizations within the city of Pittsburgh that maybe are focusing on the same thing, approaching it in a different manner. How do we do that? What are some of your suggestions? And then the other thing would be, a lot of times after we have the programs, we have series, we have certificate programs, what kind of follow-up would you suggest in order to make those programs successful? And then I'll say for the age groups that we're looking at too, because when we start looking at wealth, we shouldn't be looking at wealth when we're 25, 30, 45. We should have been starting to build our wealth at 9, 10, and that comes from education. But how do we start it? What is it that, Manny, that you would like to see as a 25-year-old? What can we do in the community to help you to get engaged, follow up, and do it on a regular basis?
Right. Great question. Appreciate you offering that.
First, just say I'm actually 21, but I say like just the after-school programs and programs that we do have, and like you said, teaching financial literacy while we're younger, because we do go to these after-school programs and things. They just teach you with your homework. They explain what you're doing in school, and I feel like the schooling organization is the same as the prison system. I'll say system, my bad, because I've been incarcerated. So the same things that you go through in jail, walking behind your back, hands to your side, you do all of that when you're younger in school. It's the same as that thing. The trades, same as that thing. Definitely teaching financial literacy at a young age. And I feel like if you give a kid like, all right, say you do this good, we'll give you this. Just incentives that a kid would be like, all right, well, money's the first one. You tell a little black boy, this is how you can make some money, and this seems interesting to them, they're always going to go with it, especially if it's money involved.
You know, the financial literacy, I love that you said that, right? Because this is a question I've been asking myself forever. Why do we not have financial education in our schools as a required curriculum? Does anybody want to try to answer that? It's intentional. It's intentional because the schools are designed, the way the schools have been designed is to prepare people to go to work, to be employees of somebody, to always need to have a job, right? So there's a training that I believe is happening that's preparing people to be dependent and in the dark when it comes to money. Because the richest folks, in order for people to stay rich, they need people in poverty. They need people to be poor, to be needing their work, needing their jobs, needing their poor conditions for work. So when we're not preparing our children for economic activity, when we're not preparing our children to understand how credit works, how the importance of not spending more than you earn, and all of the things that come with learning financial principles, we are setting them up for failure. The richest schools in this state have financial education curriculums as a requirement. They also have driver's education as a requirement. Isn't that interesting? So some of this stuff has to be intentional, but some of it might go back to that thing of, well, we've always done it this way. And I think I'm going to start stripping some of these systems down and rebuilding them from the ground up.
Can I jump in quickly? So I was a banker for many years, probably 18 years actually. So, and I used to teach financial literacy personally. I know we have our Black Male Leadership Development Institute and our Black Female Development Institute, and we do teach those principles and with other people. So I think we need to start young with kids, but we also need to teach families too. And a lot of things too, people talk about budgeting, but we do have to also teach people skills so that they can create the money, right? People say, oh, this person needs a budget, but some people, they don't make enough. So it's both. It's a financial literacy and creating the skills and the gateways for people to get the education to start their own business, whatever it is. But I think in a pure model of financial literacy really is starting in a home. But the reality is that a lot of times the way we handle our finances is exactly how our family handle theirs. So I think in the schools is critical as part of life skills, but also even parents. And how do you do a way where you don't make people feel like you're condescending to them, but it's not just budgeting and finance, because I get tired of that. It's both. Right. You need to be able to make money and you need investments. And getting back to your earlier question about folks who aren't us coming to our communities, first of all, you need to listen. You need to be sincere. You need to listen and ask people. We always want to assume what they say, nothing for us without us, but we got to ask people. And people are smarter than we think with their School of Hard Knock degrees. You don't have to have a PhD. But for me, I don't care so much about people's degrees. It's like, what value can you add? How can you solve a problem? And I believe a lot of our people actually have a lot of solutions if we listen and invest and be committed to that with the right intentions.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything you want to add? Anything either one of the panelists?
If you're a student in here, find you a great mentor. Someone who is doing something that you want to do, or somebody that you could see yourself being in their position when you get older. Don't look at, it's cool to look at people who's on the internet right now, like just hip hop stars and stuff like that. It's cool for the moment, but you want longevity, always longevity over temporary pleasurement.
Yeah, I would just say about the piece around collaboration. I think that sometimes when you come into a space, you think everybody has the same intentions as you. And sometimes you come into a space, particularly if you're like, oh, we're all community organization, we're all trying to help our community. You think people have those same intentions, and you find out that, oh, wow, that's not the intention that some people have. And so, I love collaboration, because to me, we don't have to carry the whole entire weight. This is a collaboration. We're doing the media for the Urban League for the first time. I was happy to collaborate with Carlos in the Urban League, not only because they represent, because I sat down and talked to Carlos first as just a person, and felt like, okay, his intentions are like my intention. Tammy's intentions like my intention. We work with Catapult all day long, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that that's part of why sometimes you don't see the collaboration, because people become competitive like any other piece, and then it's like, sometimes, people going for a similar grant funded or whatever, and it becomes really competitive in that sense, you know what I'm saying? But to me, it's going to take all of us collectively to help solve the problem. And when we come together collectively and put our resources together, we have more than when one of us do. And so for folks, if you're down to collaborate, like with One Hood, if you have an organization, we're down to collaborate. Let's talk, let's build. If we share the same intentions, which is seeing our communities grow and thrive, we down to collaborate with you.
I just want to say something really, really fast about collaboration. I agree with everything you said, but remember what I said about survival mode. A lot of nonprofits are also in survival mode. And there is a scarcity mindset that exists that prevents people from collaborating, right? There's a keep the bottom line. I got to pay attention to the budget. I am $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 under my budget. I can't operate, so I don't want to split funding or risk the chance of losing some of my funding, and that's an awful place for a nonprofit to be. It's bad for the health of the organization, but it's even worse for the communities that we're serving. So I always have this conversation with funders, because they control the money. They have sort of set up this scarcity mindset. They've contributed to this competitive nature of the nonprofit industry. So we've really got, I think that there are a lot of nonprofits that would focus more on collaboration if they could get past that scarcity mindset and fear of losing funding. But we love collaboration because of exactly what you said. We have a small capacity. And in order to do the very big work that we want to do, we've got to have partners. However, we're not just partnering with anybody. We're only going to partner with like-minded individuals and organizations that have this work at the forefront. We're not writing grants just to get money in the door and switching lanes back and forth in missions to chase dollars. So we're really intentional and very, careful about who we collaborate with. But I think collaboration is necessary. It absolutely has to happen.
Can we show our appreciation for the panel, please? As moderator, sometimes it's difficult to sit up here and listen and not weigh in. And so I wanted to make sure I respected everyone. But a couple of points that I think are important for us to amplify, especially being here positioned at a university and at the University of Pittsburgh. I think that it's critical for us to understand the transformational force that education is. And specifically, I'll lean into the transformational force that is higher education. And so as we look at responsibility and expectation, I would encourage us to think about the role in which education plays for being a transformational force in understanding and educating the plight of our community. Part of this conversation is absolutely about how we educate the youth, but also the responsibility for us to use tools like education, the work of scholars to think about the ways in which we promote collaboration and can use the research that happens at a University of Pittsburgh to bring community together and to think about the ways that we can work collectively to have impact. You all are well aware of the number of studies that have been put out by the University of Pittsburgh that talk about the various challenges related to prosperity to the African American community. We also need to use the power of the University of Pittsburgh and the people at the University of Pittsburgh to talk about the ways in which we promote prosperity. It's critical for us to think about that. The other thing that I would offer, just as point of privilege as a moderator, especially on today, is to think about the ways in which we have to continue to champion access to higher education and the transformational force that education is in our communities. Anytime I talk to a young person, I said, I can guarantee you that I can make you a millionaire. And they look at me and say, in what way? What do you have for me? And so I tell them, I guarantee you that if you get a 4-year degree, statistically, over your lifespan, you will make $1 million more than anyone who graduates from a high school in this country. And it doesn't matter what degree that you get. And you can check those numbers and we can have a conversation absolutely about the cost of education. But I remind you that in this community, we have tremendous resources like the Urban League, we have tremendous resources like the Community College of Allegheny County, and tremendous resources like the University of Pittsburgh. And we need to use them. And so, once again, give yourselves a round of applause and appreciation to the folks for being here. And we look forward to joining you in the next phase of the discussion. Thank you so much for being here.